Hello, Anson Garcia here with Verizon, and this course is Cisco Spark Training Level 100. So let's get started. The course will consist of several segments. This is part 1. Let's call them parts, part 1 through 12. This segment this part you're looking at right now is the introduction to Spark. We're going to just look at the interface a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about Spark, where it came from, things like that. Then we're going to, part 2 will be creating and working with teams. We'll find out what teams are, when do we create teams, what do they comprise of. We'll look at spaces, look at different kind of spaces, spaces inside teams, spaces outside of teams, spaces that have one person, spaces that have several people in them, and then we'll look at one-to-one chats. Why is that different than spaces? We'll look at meetings also. How do we start meetings? How do we look at meetings? How do we manage meetings inside Spark? We'll also look at sharing files. What kind of files can I share? What kind of viewers are available inside Spark? Things like that. We'll look at bots. All the craze with these business streaming or business messaging systems are bots and integration. So we'll take a look at one so you just kind of get a feel of what a bot is. And then we're going to look at the different devices that can run Spark. So we'll look at, how consistent. If I'm familiar with my desktop Spark application, is that familiarity with that particular application on my desktop or Mac, does that lend itself for me to know exactly what to do in iPhones and iPads? What about phones? What about the Cisco SXs, which are, the telepresence kind of units that sit on the wall, the big telepresence unit? And what about Sparkboard? How does that work? And if I'm familiar with using, let's say, Spark on my iPad, does that mean that I can walk into a boardroom and use this big screen, this big Sparkboard on the wall? We'll see. Part 9, we'll look at a little bit of Spark telephony features, and we'll look how to kind of distinguish telephony features as it relates to the Cisco Spark application inside the software, application that's on your PC, Mac, or tablet, or iPhone, and what's on actual telephones, which is the next part. We'll look at the Spark Ready endpoints. So all these Spark Ready endpoints, whether it be Spark boards and phones, we'll kind of look at what those are, how they operate, what they work, and how they relate to the traditional, phones. And then we'll kind of look at Spark Hybrid, and we'll just touch on this. I have some other videos on Spark Hybrid, but we're going to kind of touch on this because this is kind of an introductory. I want to pack everything in one video series so you can understand everything. But Spark Hybrid, Spark Aware, Spark Connect, and calendaring integration, we'll kind of look at that kind of from a user's perspective, not all the back-end stuff, but if I have Spark Hybrid, what is it? What different do I get inside my Spark application? So we'll kind of look at that as well. And then I always have trouble with deployment resources, and what I mean by deployment resources are how do I keep updated with all the Spark stuff? This is an ever-growing ecosystem, whether it be Slack, Microsoft Teams, or Cisco Spark. These big giant vendors are jockeying for position, so they're releasing features every few weeks and changing things. And where do we go to kind of keep abreast of what is developing in Cisco Spark, what's coming, what features are new this week, what features were new last month that I missed that are actually there who I can use but just missed them, and then where the links are that will help me with adoption, user adoption, a little bit of training, things like that. So let's get started. That's the contents. Let's get started with the real course. Okay, so here's the introduction. So the first thing I want to say is what Cisco defines. What does Cisco define as Spark? So their definition of Cisco Spark is a simple, secure space where you can get things done from anywhere in the world. And you can even connect your endpoints into this environment as well. I'm going to jump right in and give you a quick tour of Cisco Spark. By no means are we going to look at everything. We're going to dive into everything in the other parts of the video series. But again, I'm just going to give you a little bit of sprinkle of the interface. So when we jump into the things, I'm not going to have to explain where things are and things like that. And before we dive in, let me just point out some things right here. So over here on the left, we have a little navigation menu right here. See that? Okay. We can choose, messages. We can choose that's going to be Teams. We have a little telephone. That's obviously we can choose that if we want to call somebody. We have our status. So this little status, and that's a little button we can push and get some, that's where like you use software about or help or things like that. Sign out options and settings are inside there too. That's a little drop down menu that will come out of there. Then we have some pre-made filters here. Okay, so down here, well, let me go over this part first. This piece right down here, this is kind of who I'm talking to. Remember I talked about teams and spaces and one-to-one chats. So this is kind of where that is happening. This is like chatting with someone here. Maybe I'm part of a space over here, something like that. But I can filter these things that contain messages inside them. I can see, look, I want to see all of them. Hey, I only want to see, chats and spaces that I have, that there's unread stuff I haven't seen yet. Maybe I've marked some things as favorites and like some chats as favorites and things like that, and I only want to see those. And then what if somebody's mentioned me? That's what I really want to focus on because they want my attention. And then I can flag things for maybe later follow-up or something like that, and I can also have that filter as well. So this kind of little drop-down list right here kind of filters the content of the people and spaces that are below here. And then this kind of the main body here of the application, this is where I'm going to upload files. This is where I'm going to type my messages, down here, and be messaging with people. And then I can see everyone's messages right in here, and I can scroll up and down. Remember, these type of systems are persistent, so I can look throughout the history of the message with Barbara, or if it's a space or something like that. And then I have, you don't see it, but there's a little icon here, and it has 3 ellipses, kind of like this. And you hit that, and this little activity menus comes up. Okay, so they're not showing you the little activity icon. And then I can, within this dialogue here, this messaging dialogue, whether it be a space, one-to-one chat, or whatever, I can look at my messages. I can call. Maybe I want to call the person. I can schedule meetings. I can do a whiteboard. I can look at the people that are part of this chat session. Maybe it's a space that has more people. In this case, it's just one person. So obviously, I wouldn't want to, if I chose, to look at people, it's only going to show me one person in this respect, or this dialogue here. And then I can look at files. So files that have been uploaded in here, and files, as conversations go on and files get uploaded, they kind of scroll up, right? So I can quickly click on my files and then look at the files. Very similar to if you have an iPhone or an Android or something like that, and you have a text messaging with your mom or something like that. Within that text messaging, you can kind of go and dig in, and there's a files button. I don't know if you've seen that, or a photos button, and you can see all the photos that mom has shared with you or you shared with mom. This is very similar to that. I can click on files here, and it's going to show me all the files very quickly right in this dialog right here listed, and I can see all my files that have been in there. Okay, and then this button right here is to share your screen. So this is going to come into play when you want to share your screen on the big boards on the wall. So we're going to go through that and show you that, but that's what that is. You can also share your screen with somebody else. Okay, so in a one-to-one chat or something like that, and you want to share your screen, that's the way you would do that as well. And then we have this little search guy right here, and this is a very powerful tool. If you're like me, you forget where things are, someone mentions something or this file that you need, and you need to search for it. Here, these search, you can like search messages from a particular person. You can search that are in a particular space. You can put several search criteria in there, like from John, that contain something like pictures or provisions, or you can put some keyword in there. So things like that. Now, what you're doing with this search is you're going to search inside, messaging. You're going to search inside spaces and things like that. And I know that's coming is searching within documents. So if there's documents inside the files, storage inside these messages, you can also search on keywords that exist in those documents as well. So let's take a look at the real application now. Okay, throughout this session, we'll be dealing with a couple of virtual machines, and I just want to give you the layout here. We'll be dealing with a couple here. This is Anson Garcia and Jessica. These are two Windows 10 desktops, as you can see down here. So just don't get confused when I switch over to this. I'm going to pull it up full screen so we can kind of see it better. And you can see that's very similar to the PowerPoint slide that we were just looking at. So I'm going to kind of poke around, show you around just a little bit. And here's my little menu, and I can look at my profile. I can look at settings. You know, I have some settings in here. We're going to dive more into all this stuff later on. There's my about. I can see my version of Cisco Spark. I want you to see that so you see what version I'm running and what version that we are running as part of this course. And then I got a little active menu so I can kind of put myself in do not disturb mode or something like that. And then I have my messages. Remember my messages button that's going to show me all my messages, or I want to see my teams. Okay. And then I have a dial pad so I can dial numbers here. So I can use this as my telephony system as well. So I can dial E164 numbers. And then just right here, I want to just show you, we'll dive more into this here, but I want to show you that menu that we can not only use our device, not only our PC to make calls, but we can use other systems to make calls on our behalf. And remember I was talking about the Spark systems, the Spark board and the MX and SX systems that sit on the wall? This is where that's going to come into play. So I can make calls and use a different device. In other words, if I'm on my PC and want to make a call, but I want to use the big screen on the wall, I could search for that right in here and then make that call. Okay, similar with meetings as well. So if I'm starting some kind of meeting, here's my meetings, and I can see that I have my scheduled meetings for the today. This is going to show all my meetings for today. So Webex meetings, Spark meetings, other meetings that I have scheduled, audio meeting, if they're just a traditional thing, if they're made inside Outlook or Google Calendar or something like that, I'm going to be able to see those here. So I can keep my eyes on this one application, can kind of do all my daily communications. Okay, and then I wanted to go back to messaging here, and I wanted to show you these filters here, unread, favorites, you know, so I could do unread. It's going to show me only unread. I don't have any unreads. Why don't we do that? So let's just take a look at, let's send a message over here. Okay, and let's just go back over here and see what we see. So we see that there's some activity going on in my messaging here. All right, and if I wanted to just see my unread, what I'm going to see is there's a space that somebody said something in there, and then I can go to that space right away and then kind of react to that or respond to that. So that's how these kind of things work. Any at mentions. So if anyone's mentioned me before, here's all my at mentions, and these are going to be enlisted in order of time. So the soonest one is going to be on top. Okay, same for if I do all. As soon as do you see that space kind of jumped up to the top there because the last activity was in that space. And we have flags. We'll go over that later, but I can flag messages and things like that. So let's go over to this section now. This is where everything happens, right? And I have this little guy right here where I can edit space settings. Again, we'll go more into this later. I can leave a space. I can moderate the space. I can add this space to a team and things like that. And then remember I told you about this menu over here. Oh, let me go down here. We can, if we want to add an attachment here, that's how we do that. And then we can take a screenshot. We can kind of modify our text, you know, things like that. We can got some emojis there. We want to add something. We want to mention somebody, and then we can do a personal invite right there as well, which again we'll go over later in the meeting section. We have this little three ellipses over here is what I call the activity menus, or what Cisco calls the activity menus, and that inside, this is kind of inside this. We're dealing inside here. I can look at my messages, which there they are. I can look at, I can call, I can schedule some meetings, or I can interact with my meeting stuff. I can interact with whiteboards here. Here's some whiteboards that were created in that space. I can look at the people that are part of that space as well. And then I can look at all my files. Remember I was telling you this kind of neat. I can just have all my files, and these files were shared. If we can go up, you see, and if as time goes on, there's more files, there's months, years sometimes in this, and I can look right here to go see all those files in one place. So that's really neat as well. I can interact with bots. So here's a Spark bot, and let's see what it does. It's a kind of artificial intelligent robot that I can discuss things with. And what it is, what Cisco SparkBot is kind of a help bot. So I can ask it questions and it'll give me tips and tricks on how to use Spark. So that's a good one to add to your Spark messaging or contacts. And I'll show you how to do that as well. And what else did I want to cover? I covered meetings. Okay, let's go back and get back to the presentation. I just want to quickly go over where other Cisco products. So Cisco makes a lot of products, and we know they make phones. We know they make Spark Room systems and things like that. Where do all these things fit in this realm? Well, it's quite interesting. Where they do fit is these things can be used with Cisco Spark. Not only can they be used with Cisco Spark, they kind of run Cisco Spark, so to speak. In other words, if I'm very familiar with running or using my desktop Cisco Spark, my desktop PC or Mac Cisco Spark, I'm going to be very familiar how to use these things. In fact, not only that, but in the case of Spark boards, I can kind of paste my Cisco Spark application kind of right onto the board. And that way, I already know how to use Cisco Spark on my iPhone, iPad, or desktop. That same experience, that same familiar interface is going to be with me right on the board. So again, no learning curve. There's nothing different. Remember, things inside boardrooms and big screen systems have traditionally been difficult to use. Well, all that starts going away with Cisco Spark. And we can also connect up our DX series professional phones. Now, what's quite interesting with these guys is, remember I talked about whiteboards. Like this guy, you can whiteboard and be in a collaborative whiteboard session. In other words, across the campus or across the world, I can be whiteboarding and brainstorming ideas and writing on one board, and someone else across the world writing on another board, but I'm seeing it, he's seeing what I read. So it's one whiteboard that's extended across the world. Well, these systems will be able to participate in that too. There's a lot of real estate here, and you can use your finger or capacitive touch pen or something like that to participate in those type of sessions too. And again, they're Cisco Spark, very familiar. All right, and same with this system. And in these systems, although they're called DX systems, they're kind of professional series phones. The real estate's a little bit, one wouldn't do a whiteboard session with this, but you could share, someone could share content or something. You can easily read it on that. But usually this is going to kind of be used for the traditional, person. You're having a video conference with somebody or something like that. And then we have the lower line phones that can also connect to Cisco Spark. And this just brings the whole portfolio of unified communications. Okay, that's where Cisco's kind of playing their hand there. In their business messaging system, the whole portfolio of communications, whether that be business messaging and rooms and spaces and content sharing and persistent, chat rooms and all that stuff, but also part of communication is calling somebody from your phone, from your traditional phone that sits on your desk, if you're an enterprise that still uses these particular things. So all these things are going to work together very easily and be very familiar to you, because your unified communication system is all using one style of application. And the last thing I'll cover in this segment is the integration into your system. So most definitely these type of cloud systems, you want to be able to sync users to easily create all your users in Spark, and that's definitely doable with Cisco Spark. So you can suck all your users into the Cisco Spark Cloud. You can use any identity providers, so whether that be on-prem Active Directory with ADFS, to kind of glue in your credentials and credential policies. Maybe you have some password policies, password aging, complexity policies for your passwords. Those are all get glued into the cloud with these type of identity features that Cisco Spark has. And then calendaring. Calendaring is still a part of unified communication. Cisco Spark does not have a calendaring application in your traditional sense like Exchange does, or Google's G Suite or Google Calendar. So you can paste these things or glue them or integrate them, and I'll show you what that looks like later on in the series. So that's it for the introduction. I hope you stay with me throughout the series, and I certainly hope this has been informative, and thank you for watching.